Welcome to IST's TimeWare3 software. This tutorial will walk you through the setup of TimeWare3, connecting it to HyTek's Meet Manager, importing event lists, setting up and running a meet. TimeWare3 and Meet Manager are two separate software packages created by two different companies, but they are designed to interface seamlessly. Before you begin, you should check to make sure that you have the most current version of both software packages. To make things easier, we recommend that you run TimeWare3 and Meet Manager on two separate computers. For this tutorial, I will be using Windows Vista as my operating system. Your system may look slightly different depending on which operating system and which version you are running. You can consult the Windows help files for information on how to network your particular computers. When HyTek's Meet Manager is installed, it creates a folder called SWMeets3 on that computer. In order for TimeWare3 to pass information back and forth with Meet Manager, it must be able to read and write to the SWMeets3 folder. To make sure that you have those permissions set correctly, open My Computer and navigate to the SWMeets3 folder. Right-click on SWMeets3 and select Properties. On the General tab, make sure that the Read-Only attribute is clear. Next, select the Sharing tab. Here, make sure that the Share this folder option is checked, or click the Share button. Share it with everyone. And make sure that the share name is SWMeets3. Next, click on the Security button. You'll need to make sure that everyone is given full control and the ability to change and read the file. Click Apply to save your changes and OK to return to Windows Explorer. The SWMeets3 folder should now have a hand under the file icon indicating that the folder is shared. Now let's take a look at the setup for HyTek's Meet Manager. Before we set up Meet Manager, you must make sure that you have HyTek's Timing Console Interface installed. To find out if you have that module, click on Help and About. You should have the Timing Console Interface box checked. If you are using a swimwear alphanumeric scoreboard from IST, you should also have the Alpha Scoreboard Interface checked. If you do not, then you do not have the necessary software modules and you should contact HyTek for more information on how to purchase them. Once you are sure that you have the modules that you need, click Close. Now, select Setup and Timing Console Interface. Select the generic network file sharing for IST, Take Your Mark, Algae, and SST. Then click OK. If you are using a swimwear alphanumeric scoreboard and have HyTek's Alpha Scoreboard Interface option, select Setup and Alpha Scoreboard Interface. Here, select Network File Sharing IST, and then click OK. Now we've got Meet Manager set up, so let's go set up the TimeWare3 side. Before we set up Meet Manager, you must make sure that you have HyTek's Timing Console Interface installed. To find out if you have that module, click on Help and About. You should have the Timing Console Interface box checked. If you are using a swimwear alphanumeric scoreboard from IST, you should also have the Alpha Scoreboard Interface checked. If you do not, then you do not have the necessary software modules and you should contact HyTek for more information on how to purchase them. Once you are sure that you have the modules that you need, click Close. Now, select Setup and Timing Console Interface. Select the generic network file sharing for IST, Take Your Mark, Algae, and SST. Then click OK. If you are using a swimwear alphanumeric scoreboard and have HyTek's Alpha Scoreboard Interface option, select Setup and Alpha Scoreboard Interface. Here, select Network File Sharing IST, and then click OK. Now we've got Meet Manager set up, so let's go set up the TimeWare 3 side. To log in to TimeWare 3, select the Light system from the drop-down list and press Enter. This is the first screen that you will see when you open the TimeWare 3 software for the first time. TimeWare 3 is a scaled-down version of Meetware 3, our complete meet and team management software package. Throughout the software, you may see references to Meetware 3 because the two are tightly integrated. This is also why many of the menu options are not available. Those items are only available in Meetware 3. If you are not sure which software package you are using, you can check the name on the top menu bar. Here. You are now at the main menu. The first thing we will do is to set up your system preferences. System preferences will allow you to set TimeWare 3 up according to your specific pool situation. From the main menu, click Utilities, and then System. The default system that comes loaded with TimeWare 3 is the Light system. We are going to set up our own system. You can have up to 2 systems plus a test system in a regular TimeWare 3 license. To set up a new system, click on New. Next, we will give our system a name. I have both a men's and a women's program that I like to keep separate since they swim in different seasons, so I will set this one up for the women's team. Each system should have a unique name with less than 20 characters. Once you have entered the system name, press Enter and type in the system folder name. This is the name of the folder in which all of the data will be stored within TimeWare 3. It should not have any spaces or punctuation characters. Mine will be OH Girls. Now press Enter. You now have the option of entering a password for the system. You can type whatever you want into the field. If you forget the password, you can simply type in GOIST to get into the system, and you can come here to change your password at any time. Now that we have the system set up, we need to set the preferences. We'll check Demo so that we can do timing without being hooked up to the computer timing interface. Here, you can also select whether you want to see the tips screen when you start TimeWare 3. We also need to set the number of lanes in the pool. I have 6, my pool length is 25, and it's measured in yards. For the scoreboard manufacturer, select a brand of scoreboard that you use. If you do not have a scoreboard, select None. Mine is an IST, of course. I have 1 scroll line, 6 fixed lines, and it is 16 characters wide, or a single wide board. If the scoreboard is a numeric-only board, make sure that the numeric checkbox is checked. I only use one end for inputs. My pads are at the starting block end, so I have a pad or a touchpad as the primary input and 1 button as my backup input. My system is for high school. This setting helps to determine which dive tables and rule settings to use, and also whether the swimmer's grade or age is displayed on reports. This is a pretty standard setup for a system. If you want more information about any of the other items on the screen, you can take a look at the help files. The next thing we need to do is look at the hardware setup. You'll need to exit System Preferences, go to Utilities, and Set up Hardware. Here you can select the COM port that you are going to connect the timing box to. Only available COM ports will be in the list to select. If you do not know which COM port you are using, you can find out by looking in the Windows Device Manager. For more information on that, look at the Windows help files. The secondary or scoreboard port is only used if you are using boardware. I'm not, so we'll leave it set at None. Now set the results port to GNet. Change the Files of Type to All Files, and navigate to the SW Meets folder on the HyTek computer. You can click on any file within the folder and click Select. The GNet path is now displayed, and you should check to make sure that the path ends with SW Meets 3. If it doesn't, you'll need to go back and select a file within the SW Meets 3 folder to get it to show up that way. Now that we've got that done, we can go back to Meet Manager and download an event list from HyTek's Meet Manager. Before we can download the event list from Meet Manager, you will need to set up your meet, events, and enter your athletes. If you need instructions on how to do this, please contact HyTek for more information. Make sure that you are using the database for the correct meet by checking the database name at the top of the Meet Manager screen here. Now, select Run, Interfaces, Timer GNet, and Download Events to GNet. Say yes, and this will create a file in the SW Meets 3 folder called generic.sch, which you can see here in Windows Explorer. This will also overwrite any previous file of the same name. Now we can import the event list into Timeware. Now we can import the HyTek event list into Timeware. From the Timeware 3 main menu, select Utilities and Event Lists. Click Import and type in a name for your event list. It should be less than 30 characters but descriptive. Click OK. In the Importing Event Lists window, change the files of type to .sch. Navigate to the HyTek SW Meets 3 folder, select generic.sch and click Import. Now check the events to verify that you have imported the correct event list. If you have the Alpha Scoreboard Interface from HyTek, you can go ahead and create a start list in Meet Manager. If you do not, we'll move on to setting up a meet. Before you set up a meet, you should make sure that you have GNet set correctly. If you haven't done that, please go back and do it now. To set up the meet, click Meets and Meet Setup. To add a new meet, click New. Type in the meet name and press Enter. The meet date should match the date that you gave the meet in Meet Manager. Select the event list that you imported from Meet Manager. Note the dataset number, which is here. This corresponds with the meet number in Meet Manager, and this number must match the meet number when you are importing results. In order to move the heats along quickly, you can uncheck Confirm Heat Results. All changes to times and disqualifications can then be done in Meet Manager, and you can move right on to the next heat. For the purposes of demonstration, though, we're going to go ahead and use that. Now that we have the meet set up, we can go ahead and time it. Before you run a meet, it is always a good idea to check your equipment, even if it was working the last time. If you run into any problems during diagnostic, please recheck all of the cables and connections to make sure that they are properly plugged in. If you are still having problems, you can refer to the Timeware 3 help files for diagnostic and troubleshooting advice. If you still can't get it to work, please contact IST for support. To check your equipment, click on Meets and Diagnostics. If you have a scoreboard, we'll check that first. So click on Scoreboard. Since we are in demo mode, we are not hooked to a physical scoreboard. However, it will still load the test pattern onto the computer. The pattern will be different based on whether you are using a numeric or alphanumeric board. This is the alphanumeric pattern, which shows the row and column number for each panel on the scoreboard. Carefully compare this pattern to the pattern on the scoreboard. They should match exactly. Once you are sure that they match, click Continue. The scoreboard and screen will now run through the available character set for your scoreboard. Use this to make sure that all of the LED clusters are working properly. When you are sure the board is working, click Exit. Now let's check the computer timing interface, deck cable, touchpads, and backup buttons. Click on Meets, Diagnostics, and Deck Cable. This is the deck cable diagnostic screen. Because we are in demo mode, you will see the touchpad simulator on the screen. When you are running an actual meet, this will not be visible. If the timing box is plugged in and working correctly, the status will be green. And you will also be able to see the markers counting T1, T2, T3, or ticks. To test each touchpad and backup button, press on them one at a time. We will simulate that by clicking on each pad and button on the touchpad simulator. As you press a pad or a button, you will see the I/O number and the name of the device appear on the screen. The name of the device will also appear on the scoreboard if you have one. You should also fire the start device and press the backup start plunger button that is attached to the front of your CTI. When you are finished with the test, click Exit. Now we can time a meet. Once you have your meet set up, you can begin timing. To time a meet, select Meets and Basic Timing. The first thing you need to do is select the meet you want to time. When you come into timing, it will bring you to the last meet that you were working with. If there isn't anything in the meet, it hasn't been seated, and you don't have a start list for it, it will ask you if you want to add a heat to the event. Say yes to continue on to basic timing. If you haven't done anything with a meet, it takes you to the first one in the list. If you have been working with a meet, it takes you to the last meet that you worked on. Click on the meet drop-down list to select the meet that you want to time. Next, select the event that you want to time. When you select the meet, this defaults to the first untimed event in the event list. Next, check the GNet status to make sure that it is ready. If it is off, the network between the TimewWare2 and Meet Manager computers is not working, and you will need to fix it. If you cannot fix the network, you can go ahead with timing and then send the results from offline scoring later. The dataset number, here, should match the current meet number that was selected in Meet Manager when you created the start list. This number cannot be changed in TimewWare. To select the number in Meet Manager, click Run, Interfaces, Timer, select Dataset stored from GNet, and select the meet number that matches the dataset number in TimewWare. You can use the Previous Meet or Next Meet buttons to move back and forth until you get to the right meet number. Now you are ready to time the meet. Before we start timing, let's take a quick tour of the timing screen. This shows you which heat you are on and how many heats are in the event. When you first begin timing an event, it will be heat 1 of 1. If you need to add more heats once you have finished the first heat, you will have the option to do so, and the heat will be assigned as 2 of 2. Here we have the lane number, status, splits, finish time, and lap number. You can change the status of a lane to off if a swimmer does not report to the blocks for the race or if the lane is empty, simply by clicking on the lane status. To begin timing an event, you need to arm the system by clicking the arm button. Since we are in demo mode, this brings up the touchpad simulator. It also puts the word quiet up on the scrolling line of the scoreboard if you have one, so that the official knows that you are ready to start the race. You will also notice that the timing status has changed to wait for start. To start the race, the official will fire the start device, and someone should press the starter's backup button that is plugged into the front of the computer timing interface. We'll start the race by clicking on the Start button on the touchpad simulator. Once the clock starts, you will see it running both here and on the scoreboard. if you have one. Most of the time you have to wait 15 seconds for the touchpad to activate before it can be hit, but in demo mode you only have to wait 5 seconds. The first leg of the relay has completed, and you can see the subtracted splits have been recorded on the screen as well as on the scoreboard. The splits are yellow because it was less than 19 seconds. Unless you have a very fast swimmer in the pool, a 19-second split usually means that somebody hit the touchpad in error. Probably they waited too long in the water and bumped it as they were climbing out of the pool. This is the second leg split, and as you can see, one of the lanes didn't register. If this happens, or if someone hit the pad early climbing out of the pool, you can correct it by clicking on the lap number here and move it to the correct number. In this case, we need to bump it up because that swimmer didn't hit the touchpad hard enough to trigger it when they finished. You can see that it put the split time in as the time that the lap was counted up. This may lead to inaccurate split times, but you will still get a correct finish time. Here you see the time highlighted in red. This tells the operator that there was a backup time received, but no pad time. If this happens once in a while, it is usually due to human error. However, if it happens consistently, you may need to check the touchpad in that lane. This is the end of the race. If you had the confirm heat results clicked, it will now take you to the confirm screen. Otherwise, the results will be transmitted to GNet and you will move on to the next event. This is the heat confirm screen. Here you can enter disqualifications or DQs and correct finish times as necessary. The lanes are listed in the order of finish, with the fastest at the top and the slowest at the bottom. It shows the finish or official time for each lane, the time recorded by the touchpad, the backup button or buttons. It also displays any errors on the lane and what the difference was between the backup button and the touchpad. You can see that for the first place team in lane number 1, there was a pad time of 1:37:30 and a backup time of 1:37:90. The finish time is the same as the pad time. For lane 3, there is an error that there was a missed backup, and the finish time is the same as the pad time. You do not necessarily have to adjust the time for a missed backup, but if you get a lot of those, you will either need to tell your button pusher to pay attention or check the equipment. For lane number 4, the error was no pad, which means that either the swimmer did not hit the touchpad hard enough to register, or there was a pad malfunction. In this case, the backup button time is taken as the official finish time. For lane number 5, the error is a difference greater than 0.29 between the touchpad and the backup button. If you are sure that the pad was working correctly, then the problem is most likely with the backup button operator. If the touchpad was late, it is often due to a swimmer not hitting it hard enough the first time and then bumping it once they finished the race and were leaning on the wall. The order of finish, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in this case, will be displayed on the scoreboard. If the order is correct and it agrees with what the official has, you may not need to make any adjustments. If there is a problem with the order of finish, you can hand enter a watch time or a backup time if you have one, or a time that will make the order of finish match what the referee has, since he is the ultimate authority. Click on the finish time for that lane and swipe to select it. Then type in the backup time to the 100ths without using any punctuation. And press enter. This will be recorded as the official finish time on the final reports. If you need to disqualify a swimmer or a relay, click on the status of the lane and change it to DQ. Click OK, and you'll be asked if you want to show the changes on the scoreboard. We don't have a scoreboard, but we'll say yes anyway so that we can continue. And now we'll be asked if we want to run another heat for this event. Clicking yes will add another heat to the existing event. Clicking no will move you to the first heat of the next event in the list. And ask if we're ready to time the next heat. Say yes to add a heat to the 200 freestyle, and we're ready to go. Now let's take a look at some other situations that might arise when you are timing an event. We'll run the 50 free as an example. Add a heat, and there it is. First, if you need to deck scratch a swimmer, someone who has decided not to swim in the event and you were told about it before the race began, click the status on their lane to off. Now you can go ahead and arm the system. The starter starts the race and then gives a false start signal. Click the stop button, which used to say arm, and you will see this box. If you clicked the stop button in error, select continue timing and no one will know. If there was a false start and you need to restart the swimmers, select stop and restart to reset the timing screen as if you had never started the race. If you want to pretend that you ran the heat and put hand times in, select stop and mark as timed. Once you've made your selection, click OK. So we'll rearm the system. The starter starts the race, and everything is fine. Until the freshman in lane 5 gets a cramp and has to stop at the end of the pool. To stop timing the lane, you can either turn the lane off by clicking on the status, or you can click on the Stop Lane button and select the lane from the list. If you turn the lane off, it will act as if you had never timed the lane at all. If you click the Stop Lane button, it will record a 0 time, and you will need to put in either a hand time or turn the lane off in the heat confirmation screen. Okay, looks like everyone else made it through this heat. Because we stopped the lane with stop lane, it was recorded as a 0 time. You have to fix this before you can move on, so you will either need to change the time to put them in the correct spot or change the status to off. And now we can move on to the second heat of the 50 free. So now we're in heat 2 of 2. Once the entire event has been run, the results will automatically be sent to the SW Meets folder through the GNet connection. If there is a problem with the connection, the results are saved and can be sent from offline scoring later. That's most of what you'll see happen in timing. Now let's run the diving event, which requires the diving module for Timeware 3. When you come into diving, it will ask if you want to add divers for that event. Click yes to go ahead and do that. The first thing we need to do is set up the diving event. Enter the number of divers, the number of dives, which in a normal dual meet is 6, but for our training purposes we'll do 2, and the number of judges. I'll set mine to 3 since that's standard for a dual meet, but you can set it to whatever you use. Diving is scored based on the NFHS rules for the numbers of judges. Once you have that set up, click the Setup button, and it will add the divers into the diving list. You can click on the names and swipe them and replace them with the name of each diver instead of just Diver 1, Diver 2. This will make it easier for you to keep track of which diver is currently on the board. You can also preload the dive lists here if you have time. Right-click on each diver's name and type in the dive number, including the letter, into the box. When you are finished, click Done. Once you're sure everything is correct, click the Start button to begin diving. You'll see the first diver in the list is highlighted in green, and their name and current round are listed at the top of the screen. As the announcer reads the first dive number for that diver, you will need to type it into the dive number box unless it was already preloaded, which ours was. If it was preloaded, all you have to do is press Enter to accept it. Our first diver is doing the 203C. Notice that the DD and the description are already listed here. When the judges display their scores, you can type them in. To enter a 4.0, you can either press 4 space or 4 enter. To enter a 4.5, you can either type 4.5 or 4.4. To enter a 3.5, you can type 3.3. Once you've entered the last score, press Enter again or click on the OK button to accept the scores and display them on the scoreboard and move on to the next diver. The green bar now moves to the next diver and the dive number field clears so that you can enter the next dive. Since we did not preload the dives for this diver, we will need to type it in. She is doing a 103B. This diver forgot what she was doing and performed the dive as a tuck, not as a pike, and the judges gave her all zeros. You can either type the zeros into the score boxes or click the Failed button to fail the dive and move on to the next diver. This diver is doing a 103C, and the judges give her a 5, 5, and a 5.5. Oops, I mistyped that dive number and I just now realized it. To go back to the last diver, click Last Dive. This brings the last diver's dive number and scores back so that you can make any corrections to either one. Then click OK to move on to the next diver. Our next diver is doing a 101C. It was a good dive, but she seems to have hurt herself. The coach asks to withdraw her from the competition. Click the Stop button to stop diving. You can then go change her status to Off, so that the next time through the list she will not come up and will be skipped. This is the same way that you handle a disqualification. Once you've changed the status, click the Start button again, and diving will pick up right where it left off. This has been a pretty eventful diving event, so let's just skip ahead to the end. Okay, so here we are at our last diver performing her last dive, which is a 301B. Her scores are 4.5, 5, and 4. When diving is completed, if you are absolutely sure that everything is correct and the scores are right, you can click Yes to score diving. Diving doesn't actually get scored, but the results get sent to GNet so that they can be picked up by the HyTek software. If you need to make any changes to the diving, click No. To make a change to a diving score, whether it's a DD change or a score change, single-click on the total score. That will bring up this screen, and it will allow you to change the dive number, the DD, or any of the scores. Once you're finished, click Exit. Don't forget after you've made the changes to click the Score button to send the information to GNet. Diving is the only event in TimeWare that does not automatically send the information to GNet. Now let's take a look at bringing the times into Meet Manager. Once an event has been completely timed in TimeWare, you can bring the times into Meet Manager and make any changes or print reports. From the main Meet Manager screen, verify that you are using the correct database for the meet that you are timing. Click Run. Select the event to bring in from the events list. Now select Interfaces, Timer GNet, and select Data stored from GNet. Verify that the current meet number shows the date and data for the correct meet. It must also match the dataset number from the TimeWare 3 timing screen. If not, select Previous Meet or Next Meet until you get to the right meet number. Close that, then click Get Times to bring the times in from the SW Meets 3 folder. From here, you can make any changes or print your reports. If there was a problem with the GNet connection during the meet, or you were not able to transmit the results, or if you just want to send them again, you can do so through offline scoring. Select Meets and Offline Scoring. You'll notice that the screen looks similar to the timing screen. Anything that you can change on the timing screen, you can change here, including the final time. You can also add splits by right-clicking on the final time to change the splits. To send the results to GNet again, check to make sure that the GNet status is ready. Then click the GNet Send button. If you want to send all of the results from the meet, check the Send All box, and then click the GNet Send button. When you are finished running your meet, it is a good idea to make a backup of TimeWare 3 to save your data. Before you do the backup, make sure that you have a safe place to keep it, either on a CD, DVD, USB thumb drive, or other removable media. You can also back up to a network drive if you have one available. Please do not back up your system to your hard drive. If your hard drive crashes, you will lose both your data and your backup. To back up the system that you are in, click Utilities, Backup, and Backup. Click on the Browse button and select the place that you want to store your backup. I'll store mine on a network drive. Once you have selected it, click the Zip button. This will zip your backup to the selected drive in a zip file format, which takes up less space. Zipped backup files can also be emailed to IST if you have encountered a problem that you would like us to take a look at. Backup files are given a standard name as backup_system folder name, so mine is backup_OHHS girls. Anytime you do a backup, it is the same name, so if you put a backup in the same spot as an older one, it will overwrite the old one. If you want to keep older backups, use Windows Explorer, to find the file and rename it so that it won't be overwritten. Just remember, when you restore it, the file name has to be backup_system folder name. Speaking of restoring, in the event that you need to go back to one of your backups, click Utilities, Backup, and Restore. Click the Browse button to find the backup file that you want to restore, and click Restore. If you selected the correct backup file, remember it has to be named MWBackup_system folder name. It will restore your system and you are back in business. In order to avoid confusion, you can also delete any meets that you don't want to keep in TimeWare 3. To delete a meet, click Meets and Meet Setup. Select the meet and click Delete. Once you have deleted any meets that you do not need, click Exit. You can now delete any event lists that you are not going to need again. Click on Utilities and Event Lists. Select the event list that you want to delete and click Delete. You can only delete an event list that is not used in a meet, so you have to delete all the meets that use this event list before you can delete it. You can also clean up your SW Meets 3 folder. Using my computer, navigate to the SW Meets 3 folder and delete the startlist.slx and generic.sch files, which will be overwritten the next time you create a start list or download an event list anyway. You can also delete the .gen files, which are the event files that were downloaded to GNet. That is the basics for setting up and running your first meet. Practice is a good thing, so set up a practice meet of your own and run through a couple of events in demo mode. If you have any questions, you can check out our extensive help files or contact our staff. If you have any questions about how to use HyTek's Meet Manager, please contact their support staff. Thanks for purchasing IST's TimeWare 3 and have a great meet.